Infectious diseases. So in this video we're going to do this throughout at least for the summer semester. If you're watching this in the fall, this will be a different thing, but I'm going to go ahead and say this for summer, is that infectious diseases I'm going to do throughout the entire summer, and kind of make that so every quiz you'll see a disease just kind of being out there, kind of keeping you guys on track on it, and then there'll be a quiz on infectious diseases at the end. And then there will be an exam 4 that has the infectious diseases as well as some of the infectious diseases on the comprehensive final. Okay, so we're going to get started with infectious diseases. I didn't choose a quote for this chapter yet, just hadn't had a chance to put one in. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do about the first 25 diseases. We'll go up to viral diseases, the lymphatics, and cardiovascular system. And that's where I'll kind of go, and then I'll come back. So we're going to start with viral diseases that affect skin. Some of these pictures can be a little unsettling. We're going to start with one of a really nasty virus is smallpox. Smallpox is a nasty virus, one that vaccines definitely have been able to eradicate. We are looking at this virus caused by variola. That's the viral particle, and this, how we get it is basically you inhale it. It's a viral respiratory route. You breathe it. You breathe the virus in, and then it goes into your internal organs, goes through the blood, ends up to the skin, and sets these really nasty pustulous lesions that we see on this child. This was, as bad as it was, this was the thing we made the first vaccine from. The first vaccine actually gets its name from this because milk maidens would get the disease called cowpox, which is a similar virus. Cowpox, though, pretty harmless. You get it, you don't feel great, but it's not a bad virus to get your hands on. What would happen with this particular thing is if you inoculated someone with cowpox, they became immune to smallpox. So we get Vaca cow vaccine. And we eradicated it at least back in 1979. This is a really nasty, so Jenner's smallpox vaccine, very important historical thing. So in chapter 1, you'll definitely see that kind of history and microbiology. There are lots of papillomaviruses. Papillomaviruses, like the human papillomavirus, causes genital warts. Warts are caused by a papillomavirus. Those are just your cells get rough and proliferate on the skin. So here we have some warts right here on this child's hand. Okay, so other viral diseases, chickenpox from varicella. This is also breathed in. It goes by a respiratory route. It goes in and infects your skin cells for about 2 weeks. And then what can happen with varicella as you get it, it can go into a latent stage where it hides in the nerves, and the virus stays dormant in peripheral nerves and then becomes recurrent as the latent. It stays in your dorsal root ganglia, which you may remember from A&P 1, and it goes on to become shingles. Really fascinating particular virus that is. We'll learn why this happens if you guys have already done some of the stuff. If you're doing this one later, then you basically know that some viruses use what's called the lytic life cycle of viruses, where they just cause the cells to rupture and die, and then some use the lysogenic life cycle, where they incorporate themselves into cells. So that's what this virus uses. That's why you can have it for. So it's a herpes relative. So varicella zoster. Now, we look at other herpes viral skin infections, herpes simplex, HS1. These are your cold sores. They are latent, so that means it stays in a kind of dormant stage. So you would see that around your mouth, around there. It's in the trigeminal nerve. Remember, there's 3 branches. the ophthalmic maxillary mandibular division, so it likes to hang out in the trigeminal nerve branches and stay latent there and then come out onto the skin. If you have cold sores, we call these cold sores or fever blisters. They show up usually when you have a weakened immune system, they'll show up. Now the other herpes that is also herpes, both of these are because they use the lysogenic life cycle, you have them forever. There's the genital herpes, which is gotten from sexual contact. And then we have, in the next pictures, are measles and rubella. Measles, rubeola is another name for measles. This is caused by a morbillivirus. Very, very, very easy to transmit. So very spreadable disease is measles. You breathe it in, respiratory droplets, and then it causes a rash. We almost eradicated it. I say almost. We know that measles is making comebacks, things like that. German measles, rubella, which is part of the MMR vaccine. There is a vaccine for measles, mumps, and rubella. Rubeola is the measles, rubella, the German measles. I never had these because I did get the MMR vaccine. Now, I got chickenpox as a child because the chickenpox vaccine didn't exist when I was born in the early 80s. So, anyway, some really fascinating things there. All right, now we're going to look at some parasites that infect skin. These are things like we have these mites that infect the skin called scabies. The species is Sarcopedes scabii. And so sarco meaning flesh, so the skin. We call this, the disease caused by this, we often commonly call the 7-year itch. It burrows into your skin and lays eggs, so this causes itching, and so intimate contact, touching people with scabies, touching, holding hands, things like that. You might get the scabies at the fingers. Pedicillosis, that is lice, head lice, pubic lice, there is body lice, head lice, body lice, and pubic lice. Now, they feed on blood, so the head lice, they all are Pedicillosis humanus. If it's head lice, it's capitis. If it's a body louse, it's corposus. And if it's a pubic lice, it's pubis. Pubic lice, we call those crabs, commonly in the common vernacular. And that's the common street term for them. The name given to them is oftentimes crab. Now, an endemic typhus can be spread by body lice. So, and actually, they are some slightly different species. I read a paper when I was in school, and that head lice and pubic lice are more closely related to gorilla lice than they are head lice. And that's kind of scary to me. Now, bacterial infections, one of the common bacterial infections we get throughout our life is acne by Propionibacterium. So, acnes. This will block your follicles, causing inflamed lesions of the skin. Sebum, and they may rupture. It's the most common skin infection we get. Acne tends to affect us more strongly as we are in pubescence, but we still get acne even older. Impetigo, it's usually caused by a Staphylococcus aureus or Streptococcus pyogenes infection. Pustules, they get crusted. We call them school sores or impetigo. It oftentimes affects children. They get it from school, drinking after each other, things like that. They get some, so. All right, hot tub rash. This is a folliculitis. Two bacteria that typically cause it, Pseudomonas aeruginosa or Staphylococcus aureus. The reason I'm using some abbreviations in here is I normally would have already gotten to cover the diseases, some of the bacteria in the fall, but summer I chose to do it this way. So there's two different, the professor who taught it in summer, he had his way of doing things. I kind of went with another instructor's way that he made a suggestion. I kind of went with his way. I liked his way better, that I could spread it out more. And the diseases definitely are important. I would like to even do more diseases as possible over because of online. The hot tub rash, basically an abrasion, so it's opportunistic. So you get a scrape, you get in the hot tub, it gets in there. Another infection of the skin that you may get is an infected tarsal gland with these species called a stye, a tarsal gland or meibomian gland in the eye lid. These species can actually grow in soap films, and they can affect immunocompromised people pretty easily. This one, really trigger warning here, is necrotizing fasciitis, the flesh-eating bacteria. Now, lots of species can do this. Streptococcus pyogenes, pyo means pus, Clostridium perfringens, Staphylococcus aureus, the Bacteroides fragilis, and Aromonas hydrophilia. So these species can eat the skin. Now the bacteria don't eat it. The cells don't eat the tissue. It's exotoxins that they release that actually destroy the tissue. So what happens, you get a skin abrasion, some kind of trauma, the soft tissue gets exposed, soft tissue gets destroyed by the exotoxins. So what we have to do is debridement. We have to go in and remove the tissue, and then treat the bacterial infection that releases the toxin, things like that. There's a type 1, type 2. Type 1 is a polymicrobial, multiple species. There are things that can happen where multiple species work together in conjunctions. We'll see an experiment in lab that I'll talk about. We won't get to do an online camp test. We won't get to do a virtual lab on it, but you'll get to see it. And I have some pictures of it where different species work together to damage and destroy and cause disease, to cause beta hemolysis. Type 1, type 2. Type 1 is the polymicrobial mini microbes. Type 2 is the monomicrobial 1 microbe. There's fungal infections that affect the skin. There's a mycosis, that's a fungal infection. Really, one of the things is moisture really helps that. A dermatomycosis, a skin infection of a fungus. One of these is ringworm. The species, which I'm sorry that I forgot to make these species names properly written in this slide. I need to italicize these. I did not go back and do that. I won't do it now, but I'll do it on my, I don't have my original, but I'll fix it. They should be, I really get pretty picky about that, and I didn't catch it in my edits while I'm writing. Ringworm is caused by Tinea capitis. Tinea means ribbon. Jock itch, Tinea crucis, cruus. I say crucis. I apologize. I'm thinking of another species. Athlete's foot, Tinea pedis, and nail fungus, Tinea unguium. I want to make sure that I get anything written correctly. Now, there are lots of things that can affect, actually they're not scientific names, I apologize. I think they're just the scientific name for the disease, the actual scientific proper disease term, not specific species. That's why I didn't write them that way. There are several genuses, genera, remember, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There are many genera that do this. Trichophyton, Microsporum, and Epidermophyton. These species, genera, sorry, say it right. Now, other skin infections can come from, can be subcutaneous. These are usually more serious because they can get into the lymphatics. These are usually from a soil fungus, oftentimes. One of those is sporotrichosis. It's caused by a Sporothrix skekii, or skinkii, sorry. Sometimes I'll say these species names. There's so many of them, they run together in my mind sometimes, and I I don't worry, like I don't have my students go crazy over scientific names in terms of memorizing all the scientific names. They'll cause small ulcerations, lesions. They live in soil. You can get them from plants. So we actually call this rose gardener's disease because they get scratched by the rose prickers, or gardeners or landscapers really get them. So it's a fungal infection you can get. You get scratched by a rose pricker. The fungus gets into the skin from the soil. You dig in the soil. So wearing gardening gloves is a really good thing. Not chewing your fingernails after working in the dirt, things like that. Candidiasis, Candida albicans, named Alba white, is part of your normal microbiota, so it's usually there. When you get like this person here has thrush growing on their tongue, oral candida disease, yeast infection is vaginal. If lactic acid bacteria, so absence of lactic acid bacteria will cause an increase in pH, will allow yeast infection to happen. So the yeast infection, vaginal yeast infections, caused by a candida species as well. There's a really nasty candida, Candida auris, that's multi-antifungal resistant. It was first found in somebody's ear. Meningitis is microbial. There's many ways that meningitis can happen, but this is nervous system. Meningitis can be like fungal, viral, or bacterial, so it's really multiple infections. Meningitis, there's encephalitis, that's inflammation in the brain. Meningitis, inflammation in the meninges. So meningocephalitis is when both. One of the things that can happen is a bacteria, Haemophilus influenza meningitis, Neisseria meningitis, and Streptococcus pneumoniae. A pneumococcal disease can actually cause meningoencephalitis. There can be an invasive species that comes in, is Listeria monocytogenes. There we go, say it right. Let's catch it. Alright, so let's talk about a really nasty virus that affects your, one that we eradicated, and that is polio. Poliomyelitis causes paralysis. Less than 1% of people, but enough people got it. You may be familiar with the president that had it. The President FDR had it. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So fever, sore throat, headache, nausea, all symptoms you get with polio. And then respiratory muscles can become paralyzed, and this can kill you. This is why iron lung was needed. Really got a lot of adolescents and young adults as well would start to have that problem. The virus multiplies in nerve cells, and it kills them with a lytic life cycle, so that death of nerve cells leads to death of paralysis. An iron lung kept thousands of people alive under that. Basically, the pressures allowed them to breathe. Though the lung muscles were paralyzed, it allowed them to breathe and live. He would have to go into iron lungs for a while. Really nasty virus is polio. We eradicated it with pretty well with vaccination, and I am incredibly pro-vaccination. A really nasty virus is rabies. Rabies, Listeria virus, really nasty. It's called a zoonosis. Zoonoses, one of the ways we get zoonoses is you get like somebody who lives with a bunch of cats, and the cats become viral vectors or disease vectors. The big population of cats in a tight space, it spreads to the cats, then it spreads to the person. So zoonosis is something we get from animals. Bird flu, swine flu, lots of diseases we get from animals called zoonoses. So it's zoonotic. And we get this zoonosis from animal bites. This virus kind of looks a little bit like a bullet. This is the rabies virus. Really nasty, diabolical virus is rabies. It infects your nervous system. You get bit, it goes through to your peripheral nervous system, so it travels up the nerves. We call that retrograde axonic transmission. It travels up the nerve, travels, gets to your CNS, and you go crazy. Mania, insomnia, paranoia. you hallucinate, you hypersalivate. One of the things that may happen is an irrational fear of water. You have what's called hydrophobia. People who have it, if they hear running water, it makes them go crazy. You don't have to break the skin to cause the thing. The virus can replicate in epithelial cells, then get to the nerve cells, and then infect you. So the bite doesn't have to break the skin. If you're bit by a rabid animal, you need to get the vaccination. So we would do this prophylactically anyway. So if you get bit by an animal and they aren't sure, they may go ahead and give you the rabies shots. The rabies shots are not like 3 big shots with big long needles in the abdomen. They do these shots. They may do them abdominally, but they're not. And there might be multiple shots, so they're not the huge shots. You can handle it. Trust me. Now, there is a vaccine for this. If you get bit, you take the vaccine. It is slow, but once this virus gets into your CNS, you are a dead person. It will kill you. It is, to my knowledge, no one's ever survived it when it gets that far. Okay. Other things that can affect our nervous system are fungal, cryptococcus, a couple species of cryptococcus, neoformin and grubii. The spores are in the soil. You inhale it, you get a meningitis from it. Really not something you would get unless you're immunocompromised for some reason, like HIV/AIDS, things like that. It's some kind of immunocompromising. Usually pretty safe. Now, bacterial ones, two of my favorite bacterial infections are Clostridium tetani and botulinum. Clostridium botulinum, both in the same genus. Clostridium tetani releases a toxin that affects your nerves, and so does Clostridium botulinum and tetani. They both affect nerve conduction, nerve transmission to the muscles. They affect neuromuscular junction in different ways. Tetanus and botulism. Clostridium botulinum, the botulinum toxin, is one of the deadliest neurotoxins known to man. We get it shot into our face to prevent wrinkles. Leprosy is caused by a species called Mycobacterium leprae. So it's a bacterial infection, but it affects nervous system. You start to have nerve loss, so tissue death, nerve loss of function, burn. So they may get burned and things like that, and not know it. Somebody might spill hot water on themselves and not feel it. The nerve damage due to the mycobacterium. Protozoans, one of my favorites that I learned about was African sleeping sickness, Trypanosoma brucei by tsetse fly. 500,000 Africans. So it makes you really sleepy. There's lots of antigenic variation to it, so lots of proteins on it, and they're highly varied, so hard to fight. There's an amoebic meningoencephalitis, one of my favorites. I call this the brain-eating amoeba. Naegleria fowleri, one of my favorite little nasty little buggers. Lives in fresh water, but relatively rare. But all you got to do is go jump in Boone Lake, get water up your nose, possibly could get Naegleria. Naegleria's mortality rate is near 100%. I only know of 3 people that have ever survived it. I only know of 3 cases that have ever survived Naegleria. There might be 4, but I only know of 3 well understood cases. Pretty nasty protozoan. Protozoans are eukaryotes, but you'll get to learn more about this. I'm just going to introduce you guys to this. Now, another one of my favorite diseases is prion diseases that affect the nervous system. Creutzfeldt-Jacobson syndrome. Creutzfeldt-Jakob, or CJD. It's a spongiform encephalopathy. You can inherit it, you can ingest it, you can get transplanted. There is a variant that's truly terrifying. It is transmitted by bites. Basically, mad cow disease became mad human disease, became mad zombie disease. It's the zombie disease, guys. It's a variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob syndrome or disease. Mad cow disease affects the cattle. It's caused by it's bovine spongiform encephalopathy. There's one caused by the Foray tribe in Papua New Guinea from cannibalism. When they eat their victims, they get a protein that is pathogenic. and it's called kuru, the laughing sickness. It's a prion. Prion are pathological proteins. All right, bacterial disease that can affect your cardiovascular lymphatics. Septicemia. One of the ways to get septicemia is getting a really nasty, my favorite bacteria ever is Yersinia pestis. Yersinia pestis causes septicemia plague, bubonic plague, and pneumonic plague. My favorite. I love Yersinia pestis. I used to work in a disease testing lab, and we did testing for animal diseases, actually, animal microbes. And a friend of mine brought in black-footed ferrets. So one of the things that's killing black-footed ferrets is Yersinia pestis, bubonic plague. He brings them in, he gets a ferret out, and he pulls the ferret out of the sack, and it's got a tag in its ear that says plague. And I was like, what do you want me to do, run a test on this? I can't get plague primers. If I had plague primers, that would put me on a watch list, on some kind of bioterrorist watch list. I don't have the clearance for that. I tested for things like saprolegnia and fungal infections, bacterial infections, viral infections, and things like that affected amphibians for the state for a while. Okay, septicemia, so a pathogen or toxin in the blood, we call it septicemia, so septicemia plague. Lymphangitis, inflammation of lymph nodes, you get red streaks like this on your near your lymph nodes. Septic shock, very life-threatening. It will decrease your blood pressure because you can't control your fluids. Organ failure, organ loss, organ dysfunction, death can kill you. Cardiovascular system can be affected by many things. One of these, called childbirth fever, is puerperal sepsis. Puerperal sepsis was, back in the day, if you went to go have childbirth from a doctor, you had a good chance of dying from this, though you had somebody very well trained in anatomy and knew what they were doing. This is before we really knew a lot of things about disease. We didn't know germ theory at the time. So what happened is a doctor would be in the cadaver lab studying their cadavers, dissecting and working with their cadavers, not wearing gloves, not wearing PPE. They would leave the dissecting theater. So a woman would come in, need childbirth, and they would not wash up after dissecting the cadaver, and they would give birth, and the woman would die of puerperal sepsis. And so if you were given birth by a midwife, you did better. Turns out it was that puerperal sepsis, a child, Streptococcus pyogenes. Strep pyogenes is what causes strep throat. It infects the uterus during childbirth or during abortions if things aren't done properly. Now very uncommon is this puerperal sepsis because we do things very differently now. Endocarditis, infective of the endocardium of heart, inner heart wall, heart valves. You get clotting and all kinds of hemolytic issues of what we would call hemodynamic instability. Pericarditis infects the pericardium. This can cause congestive heart failure, increase pericardial fluid, things like that, outer covering of the heart. Rheumatic fever, this affects cardiovascular lymphatic systems as well. Rheumatic fever caused by Streptococcus pyogenes. You get strep throat, it goes down a fascial plane, travels to the heart, infects the heart, strep throat infection, subcutaneous nodules at joints, heart valves, so you get joint pain, heart valves, things like that. You can get tumularia, rabbit fever, Francisella tularensis, tularemia, rabbit fever, rabbits and ground squirrels. Your lymph nodes enlarge, you get lesions that grow in your screen for tularemia. Really less than 3% mortality rate, but you can die from eating squirrels and rabbits. I never ate, I have eaten rabbit, I have never once eaten squirrel. As a kid, I would hunt squirrels because the squirrels would chew on our house. So I'd take my .22 and shoot the squirrels out of the trees. My dad would collect the squirrels, and my uncle would take them and eat them. He liked fried squirrel. I grew up in a place called Possum Trot Ridge, guys. I was redneck, white trash family. Okay, we're rednecks. I'm the one that got out and got educated. So My family always gives me a hard time. Now, brucellosis, undulate fever, we call it, because it rises and falls, and undulates. Brucella militensis. Sometimes I have a hard time with some of the disease names. Brucella. Symptoms rise and fall, we call it undulate. You can get it from drinking milk that's not pasteurized or meat that's not properly cooked. Mediterranean fever, we call it, muscle pain, sweating, very easily airborne. So we actually use this bacterium because it's so easily airborne and aerosoled to cause an agent of bioterrorism. Anthrax was put in powders and sent to people in government around 9/11. So when I was a kid, you would get white powder in the mail sent to places. They tracked the guy down. Anthrax, pulmonary, cutaneous, and GI infection. Anthrax can cause some pretty nasty necrotic wound. Now the next pictures get pretty gross. It's gangrene. So this is gangrene on somebody's foot. It's caused by a Clostridium species. Necrosis, loss of blood supply, so-called ischemia. Necrosis, death of tissue. The dead, dying tissues provide nutrients for the bacteria. The bacteria grows. The tissues die. It turns green. Gas gangrene is caused by Clostridium perfringens. Within the dead tissues, gas bubbles form. It ferments carbs in tissues, and it causes gas. We get crepitus, crackling and air bubbles, called crepitus. Alright, now I'm going to talk about some bacterial diseases that can affect you. Cat scratch disease. This is Barnatella henselae. That's called cat scratch disease. Affects your cardiovascular lymphatic. Plague, Yersinia pestis. It affects a variety of things. Plague, bubonic plague, pneumonic plague, and septicemia plague. One bacteria, 3 diseases, nasty little booger, wiped out Europe during the Middle Ages. Nasty little booger, one of my favorites. I love Yersinia pestis is my favorite bacteria. So Yersinia pestis. Why pestis? Because pestis. The pestilence, the plague upon us. Really cool history to that. This little bugger, this little rod-shaped bacteria, pretty nasty. It does a lot. Lyme disease, Borrelia burgdorferi. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Rickettsia, Rickesti. Make sure I say it right. There's an endemic typhus, Rickettsia prowazekii. I will make sure I say it. Prowazekii. I have a hard time with some of these. You got to admit, some of these you hear one time. It's hard to remember how to pronounce. So the species name I can have a hard time with. We'll talk about typhus. It gets its name from smoky or hazy because you're in a haze, you're delirious. You basically get a fever, you'll start to see red spots, there'll be delirium, gangrenous sores, and then you'll start to smell rotting flesh. It invades vascular epithelial cells, starts to cause the blood vessels to die and rupture. It's carried by lice. It's endemic typhus. So typhus is what killed one of the children of Franklin Pierce, President Franklin Pierce's child. He lost one of his children to typhus. Hemorrhagic fevers, the yellow fever, the British call it yellow jack. Aedes aegypti, which Aedes aegypti carries a lot of nasty things. Aedes aegypti. I am going to know the species names of bacteria and vectors a lot better than I'm going to know some of the really weird pronouncing all the different fungal things. Fungus is not I'm not a fungal biologist. I did do testing of fungal diseases, mostly chytromycosis, for amphibians. But anyway, so I have some experience with fungal disease pathogenicity and testing. But yeah, so I'll let you know my weaknesses. So there's no way you can know everything there is to know about microbiology. No one person knows all microbiology. Microbiology is too big to know everything. But it's tropical areas, your liver bleeds. They call it, the British like to call it yellow jack. Mortality is about 20%. Dengue fever. Dengue is, we call that break bone fever because you feel like your bones are breaking, the joint pain. You bleed, fever, rash, Caribbean tropics. It looks like it's spreading to U.S. as climate change happens. Mosquitoes are able to be here. Mortality is less than 1%, though it affects 100 million. So pretty nasty hemorrhagic fever is dengue, but not as bad as the ones here. Emerging hemorrhagic viruses, Marburg, pretty nasty. You bleed from your butthole, you bleed from your mouth, you bleed from your orifices, you vomit blood. Lassa, rodents. We think there might be fruit bat urine. Rodents are the reservoir for it. Ebola virus is closely related to Marburg. They're closely related to each other. You bleed from your mucous membranes. You got to get contact with blood. We think it's a bat that's the reservoir for Ebola. 90% mortality. Ebola is nasty. Your organs die because your fluids are just everywhere. They're not in the right place. You're bleeding internally. You're bleeding out your holes. Really nasty. You're bleeding out your butt. Is nasty. These things are pretty nasty. Marburg's pretty terrifying too. Marburg and Ebola, some of my favorite viruses though, because of just how nasty they are. We all got to hear about them. Now, some other hemorrhagic fevers we probably haven't heard very much about is Argentine and Bolivian hemorrhagic fevers. These are like Lassa, rodent urine, rodent excretion. So we get some like hantavirus comes from rodent pee, things like that. Hantavirus in North America, outbreaks in the western United States, Four Corners virus and Nombre virus, lungs filled with fluid, hantavirus, rodent urine. Whitewater arroyo virus, sorry I say it right, arroyo, the Arroyo area, it's in California. It's carried by a California wood rat, and it's the first ever in North America of the hemorrhagic fevers in North America. Mono, pretty infectious. It's the Epstein-Barr virus. It actually goes to your oropharynx by saliva, so we call it the kissing disease or mono. You get it from drinking, things like that. You get flu-like symptoms. Your lymph nodes swell. Your spleen swells. Your spleen could actually swell so bad it ruptures. You'll feel really bad and get flare-ups and things like that by the Epstein-Barr virus. You'll feel pretty bad with it. It can put you pretty low. I've never had it, but Chagas, Trypanosoma cruzi. Luckily, I've gotten to miss some of these. It's called the American trypanosoma, American sleeping sickness, is Chagas, an insect, the kissing bug, the reduvid bug. Your heart gets damaged, so you die from that. Esophagus and colon can stop moving. One of my favorite protozoans is toxoplasmosis. It's really wild. It actually gets in like cat feces. You clean your cat litter. You get it. It damages the brain. You behave. Mice who actually get Toxoplasma gondii, what they'll do is it alters their behavior. When they smell cat, they don't avoid the smell of cats. They seek out cat smells. They will seek out cats, not run from the cat. The cat eats them. The cat gets the Toxoplasma. Toxoplasma gets pooped out by the cat. You clean their kitty litter. You get it. And it does make women who has it, we do know, get more sexually promiscuous. It changes your behavior. Parasites alter the behavior of the host to favor spread of the parasite. It is basically zombies. Okay, now you get blood and lymph vessels, get it. Cat for life cycle shedding cat feces. Pregnant women can infect the fetus. It actually can cause stillbirth, brain damage, and vision problems in the baby. Really nasty thing is Toxoplasma gondii. Malaria, another really fascinating. Malaria infects red blood cells. It's another Anopheles mosquitoes instead of Aedes. And I think I will stop here after protozoan diseases. Yes, I probably would have gone a little further, but I wanted to get malaria. It's making a comeback. It's really a big deal. You get chills, vomiting, fever, headaches, things like that. You will be sick, and then asymptomatic, and then sick, and asymptomatic, undulates. Because RBCs, they only live about 120 days. And then you have an immunity to it if you're a sickle cell carrier, especially a sickle cell patient or a sickle cell carrier has some resistance to malaria. So, really interesting thing. Last one we'll talk about is leishmaniasis. The leishmania, there's over 20 species of leishmania. Sandflies, Mediterranean, mostly going to be seen in your skin, is where it's going to present itself. There are some visceral things, your liver, your spleen enlarged. Persian Gulf troops got it. Babiosis, Babesia microti, tick bites, red blood cells, kind of like malaria, but we get it in the Northeast and Midwest. So there's lots of infectious, especially lots of diseases are transmitted by arthropods, by bugs. We're going to go ahead and stop here and pick up in the next one. See you in the next gross stuff.